Hello everyone, hello! So, welcome to another episode of Roll for Diplomacy. My name is André Tavares. I am the host and producer of the show, and tonight, here at the other side of the table, we have Jack Harrison. Hi man,
Hi.
how are you?
Hey. I'm okay.
Are you okay?
Yeah, all
Really?
right.
With no 8 hour sleeps, you are okay?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to another night of not sleeping very much.
Okay. But I hope uh, after our conversation, at least you have some hours. At least.
Sure, sure.
So,
I'm sure it will be regenerative anyway.
beautiful. So, welcome everyone in the chat. Thank you for being here. Before we start our conversation, let's talk about the stuff we need to talk about, and that's it. That's the first. The first one is voodooplace.com, which is a Portuguese online shop where you can buy some role-playing games, board games, games for children, and hopefully in the near future you can buy rare books there in the RPG section. You have some quite indie RPG. It's not only Dungeons and Dragons and mainstream stuff. For example, you have Polaris, Star Trek, Deadlands. And yeah, I can even see Masks, a new generation here on sale. Oh no, it's out of stock, so yeah, you can't buy it. If you see anything out of stock, or if you don't find the role-playing game you are looking, you can send them an email and they will help you reach or get your game, even if it's in another shop. They are that crazy and that good. It's true, Jack, it's true. they, they
Sounds great.
they look for our other shops and give you the best one for you, the cheapest one and the fastest one. It's crazy. No one does that. They do. So support Voodoo Plays. It's the Portuguese role playing shop, and thank you for supporting it. Also, if you like to support, you can support us somehow if you understand, or somehow if you like our content. We have a Patreon page. Nowadays we have 13, which is kind of the bad luck number, but we're gonna ignore it. Uh, 13 patrons. You can. It's all in Portuguese because we are a RPG Portuguese content creator platform. But yeah, if you like these conversations and if you'd like to have access to the after conversation, after show talks, you can support us over at Patreon. With the $3 per month, you have access to that videos and also PDFs of the games. Yeah, no, not the games, but yeah, PDFs and image of maps and stuff that the team and the platform creates. More importantly, and the next topic is about creating stuff, and we are here with Jack to talk about it. But we are hosting, or at least I am hosting, my first game jam over at Itch.io. The name is Itch.io RPG Genesis. I'll posted the link right there in the chat for you, and we are with 64 participants already joined the game jam. RPG Genesis was born in 2010, and this year edition is the biggest one, and international participants are welcome. You have in the community section introduce yourself and the rules in English, so you can participate and join the game jam hosted and organized by Portuguese folk. In conclusion, or in resume, the RPG Genesis is a game jam of 7 days, where you in 7 days have to create a game with at least 5,000 words. So it's a mixture between NaNoWriMo and game design. It's crazy. You can think about the game before those 7 days, and we have 9 days to you have 9 days to think. No, not 9 days. A little bit more. It starts at 4th of August. But yeah, you can think about the game, the mechanics. You can even play test it, but you can't write it. You can only write throughout the game jam, and 5,000 words minimum. It's a challenge, but it's our way to show people and to incite people to write, because writing rules is a pain in the ass, isn't Jack?
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes. Oh, that's nice. That's nice to hear. So back to the conversation. Let's start talk about some pretty stuff. And I have here the first question, perfect for you, hopefully, which is, who is Jack Harrison and what does he do?
Yeah, I'm the perfect person to answer this question.
Hopefully.
Yeah, well, some days. Hi. So, probably the thing that defines me the most at the moment is actually that I'm a father, which is a really boring answer if you're not a parent.
Okay.
But any other parents will be like, I get it. Yeah. Because it defines literally everything that I do all the time because I'm exhausted, and most of my time obviously goes into like spending time with my son, which puts a big squeeze on everything else that I do in my life, which has a kind of knock-on effect on lots of other things. But when I'm not being a father, when I run away to work, I'm a data scientist, which my wife loves trying to explain to her friends exactly what that means, because it's very difficult. But basically, I help people answer questions with data. So I work for a map company, so people might have questions about where to put a new store or something like that, and I give them a hand figuring that out, which is really good fun. And it's a great place to work. I work with lots of other parents, so they're very sympathetic when I come in, like a little sleepy. But given that that's my job, I spend a lot of time on computers. So when I'm not at a computer, when I'm hanging out with my friends, which is a little rarer now than it used to be, then we like to play board games. We love to play role-playing games. We like to get away from screens, basically. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. So
Oh, and I design games. Yeah, sorry, that
oh,
too.
really? Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's
I didn't intentionally do that, but that's another thing that I do. That's why I'm here.
And I bet, like, if I understood correctly, so your job is to help people get answers, right? To some questions.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's like the simplest way to explain it. But yeah, so yeah.
yeah, of course. I believe that develops skills quite useful for game design.
Yeah, so there's a lot of helping people to understand
Yeah.
complex things using visuals and words. So that's definitely like a good core skill set, I think, to bring over into game design.
Okay, that's quite useful.
Not that all game designers need to be data scientists first. That's not. That's a very like circuitous route to get into game design.
Yeah, okay. So, regarding game design, before designing the games, usually one starts to play it, right? So,
Yeah.
what was your first, if you remember? Because we already understood that Jack is not sleeping well, and it's a part of the experience. So, can you tell us what was your first role-playing game you ever played? And when, where, with whom?
Yeah. So I'll give you a bit of backstory without going too crazy. But basically, I had this friend when I was growing up, since I was very young. He was called James, a very British name, and his dad worked for the BBC, who are our broadcasting company, and did all sorts of cool computer things. He created the BBC Micro, which was one of the first like computers that everyone in the UK had BBC Micros in their schools, and you had these cool little programs that you could play on them and stuff like that. But so his dad was a bit of a geek, basically, and he had all of the games that I loved at that time. So they had Space Hulk, and they had Hero Quest, and they had all of these great games, and he just had them. He had this massive cupboard with all the stuff, and so me and my friend James, as we got old enough, we played these different games and had a great time when we weren't chasing each other with sticks and that sort of thing. And I don't remember exactly how old we were, but we would have been pretty young. He ran a little D&D adventure for us, and we were that young that I don't really know which edition it was. It was before 3.5 or 3. So, these days maybe not the sort of thing that you'd start off a couple of kids with, but yeah, we loved it. I played a thief. My friend played a wizard. I'm pretty
Wow.
sure I got killed by a carrion crawler, which again is not something I think I'd do if I was introducing kids to an RPG. It's
Yeah.
like kill their character, but I still play RPGs, so maybe it's the right way to do it. Yeah, so it's some sort of D&D back in the dark ages of me being a kid.
Well, that's awesome to have like it was his father, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I have a father that geek. Or back in the
yeah.
days, you were awesome. That's awesome to know. And
I
probably
mean,
to
maybe he didn't like me very much. I don't know, but he killed my character, so I don't...
no, okay. Yeah, things were different back then. Like
Yeah,
the
that's
older
true.
the the older versions on D&D. Now D&D nowadays are not the same. Like usually back there, it were like more dungeon explorer simulation,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Nowadays it's like
and it was pretty easy to die.
yeah, it was.
Yeah,
And if you were a kid with not so creative solutions, or at least not so many logic things to predict, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
I
understandable.
probably tried to kiss the carrion crawler or something. I don't know. This is a bad idea.
No idea is bad, man.
Um,
Beautiful. So, if you can tell us, which is art question to make, not question, but answer to give. What is your favorite role-playing game? If you can tell
today,
us. Oh yeah, that's a good. Oh, you are
yeah.
smart, Jack. You are very smart. Awesome. So today, what is your favorite role-playing game and why?
I don't necessarily mean that like I change my mind every day, but
Yeah,
I think it's
from time to time, right?
from time to time. Yeah, yeah. So this is a really hard question to answer because I think I like to really I like to have like a really eclectic selection of stuff in my library. So like if I look over to my little RPG shelf there, I've got like some really old school stuff.
Hmm.
I've got some story games which are like one session and there's like not very many rules and they're very improvised. And then I've got some PBTA stuff which is like obviously kind of splits the difference a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think the game that I've had most fun with over the last couple of years is probably Masks. Masks: A New Generation, which is a PBTA game about being teenage superheroes, and I think it's the only game that I've played that treats those two things with equal importance. So teenage and superheroes.
Oh, I see.
Because like I don't know, you've been a teenager, like it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Like being a superhero, you just have to go around punching things. That's okay.
It's the
Um,
easy part of the games.
being a teenager is hard.
Oh, I see.
So a lot of the game actually deals with like your relationships with adults, your relationships with other teenagers, and then it's kind of put into a pressure cooker by the fact that you're also these superheroes that are trying to stop bad things happening. Uh, so if you have you seen Into the Spider-Verse, the Spider-Man animated film?
Yeah. So Jack, I'm an animator, so yeah,
Okay, sure.
I'm
So
yeah. I
you've
have to
watched it like
say
a million times. Yeah.
it's brilliant. Technically, it's brilliantly. It's oh yeah. It probably is the best thing technically about regarding movement and animation.
Mm.
The best thing made from I don't know. It's really very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keep going.
Yeah. So the vibe of the game is that's kind of my when I was introducing this to my friends a few months ago. That's kind of the obvious touchstone that I'd go
Mhm.
for in the superhero world. In that you've got all these like you've got Miles and Gwen who are like teenagers, and then you've got
Mhm.
like old Peter Parker who's kind of trying to tell Miles what to do, and you've kind of got all these other people that are telling him who he should be. You've got his dad, you've got his uncle, you've got all these people that are trying to tell him who he is, but he has his own stuff to deal with, and he's a superhero. It's like that, but a game basically. So it's really cool.
Oh,
Um,
so you
so
you
that's
are you the GM or a player?
So I played in a game, and then
Mhm.
I'm currently running a game of that, and it's great. Yeah, but I mean, can I do a couple of honorable mentions?
Of course, just do it. Come on, let's talk about
Yeah.
RPGs.
I just want to go either end of the spectrum. Not that they're opposites, but like,
Mhm.
on the one hand is Fall of Magic. Have you seen that?
Really? Because
Yeah.
like yeah, my community with quotes, okay, they know that my it's not my favorite game, Fall of Magic, but it was my best experience yet.
Mm.
So I
It's
can
amazing. It's so great to play.
they know.
Yeah.
I already showed once. I had two Fall of Magic keys at my house. Now I only have one because I'm that crazy, man. Yeah. Why do you love so much Fall of Magic, Zach?
Um. So, I mean, we can come onto this a bit later on, but it's the game that kind of really it's the game that I go to when I want to think about prompts in a story game
Oh yeah.
that are evocative
Mm-hmm.
without being too sort of controlling or limiting. So you read something and it's like 4 words, and you're like, this could be anything, and it's
Yeah.
really gives you at their best they give you immediate ideas. So you're not just there like, what am I doing, but also you feel like you can do anything with it. So yeah, it's really great fun, and also just the physical production. So I've got the stupid, really cool scroll. Like it's amazing. It's beautiful.
You literally
It's
scroll the story and the game as you play. It's
Yeah, yeah, it's great. So that's a beautiful artifact, and
oh
also a really good game. And then all the way over on the other side, in terms of a game that's very different to Fall of Magic, would be Torchbearer.
oh okay yeah. From
Have you seen Torchbearer?
I never
From
played it,
Luke.
but yeah, it's from Ukraine, right?
It's from Tor. I can't remember how to pronounce his surname, but and Luke Rain as well. But I think Tor is the main person that wrote the game.
Oh,
Um,
Sage Latera?
No,
No,
so
not that
let me
one.
look it up so I don't get it wrong.
No problem, man.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
but I
but
know Torchbearer.
basically,
It's like a from Burning Wheel, right?
yes, exactly. Yeah, so
With asteroids.
very crunchy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very it's much more like playing a board game than playing a more freeform RPG. In that you kind of want to game the systems and you can get better at it as you play. But just that I'm such a sucker for a low fantasy setting where you're
Mm.
penniless and you're desperate, and that for me is such a good place to start.
Maybe that comes from dying to that carrion.
Hey, maybe, yeah, it stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a really fun game as well. So, uh, yeah,
Yeah, it's really
that's
crunchy. A Torchbearer. If you out there know the Burning Wheel or Mouse Guard, Torchbearer is like a version with extroids where you need very focused on the survival aspect, right?
mm, yeah.
Where you need to count your torches. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
they are very
Otherwise,
important.
you're stuck in the bottom of a cave and it's dark and you don't know where you are.
There's no dark vision bullshit.
Nope, you're just stuck and it's rubbish, but it's great. Yeah, so, yeah.
It's
We went spelunking in caves. We've done that a few times. Um, so they always do this thing when. So do you know what? Do you have spelunking like potholing? Like you go into caves.
no, I don't do it. Very
Not the, but you know what I mean, right? Like
yeah.
crazy people that go and squeeze into tiny gaps and get into caves.
Oh,
So we've done that a few.
we do have a guy from our role playing community who does a lot of that, and
Oh, really?
he really maps. He opens,
Yeah,
he makes
yeah,
the
yeah,
entries safe, and he maps it. Yeah,
yeah. We don't do that. We just go in and somebody else has done the work. That's too scary going out into the total unknown. But we've done that a few times, and it's really good inspiration for doing stuff like Torchbearer because have all this stuff to draw on for like being in the dark and true darkness where there's like not even any sunlight penetrating, and you can wave your hands in front of your eyes and you can't see them. It's crazy. So yeah.
have you played a
But,
role
yeah.
playing game in there?
No, that's a good idea. Although you'd need some lights.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, but there's you could play 10 candles. That would be amazing. Have you seen that?
Yes, yes, where you blow,
Yeah, so
you
that would be
literally
great.
blow them. So,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
are in the dark, in the hole. Well, we
Maybe
safety.
have a backup. Yeah.
Maybe have a backup. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's quite funny to see. You are mentioning games which are quite different in both essence, design, and even in genre. So yes, I do see that Jack Harrison loves a lot of RPG in a wall. Do you have any more honorable mentions to give us?
There's loads of great ones. But I don't want to take up too much time just listing all the games I like.
Oh,
But
an old school
um,
one. Let's.
an
Do you
old
have?
school one.
Yeah.
I mean, uh, I have a soft spot, although it's very problematic. I have a soft spot for Call of Cthulhu,
Okay.
because that's one of the games. So I mentioned my friend James. When we got a bit older, we started going to a gaming group at a church, and it's one of those things where we loved it at the time, and now I look back on it and I think some of the people there were very strange. But we played some Call of Cthulhu, and it
At the
was
church?
a lot of fun in a church hall. Yeah,
You've played Call of Cthulhu in the
Amazing,
church.
yeah, it's great.
That's the best.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
That's
so yeah,
awesome.
summoning crazy monsters in a church hall. So I
Hopefully
haven't
you-
actually checked out in a long time, but I really enjoyed it at the time. It's got some cool stuff going on.
It's beautiful. Hopefully you didn't got into trouble talking about demons or old gods in the church.
Yeah, occasionally the someone that worked in the church would kind of walk by and just look over and be like, "What are these people doing? What is the world coming to?" But
Man,
we were
that's
having fun.
beautiful.
It's fine. Yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, we already checked that you really love RPG, and some of them really hit with me. Yeah, we have a lot of the same vibe, and that's awesome. That's good. Although I never played Torchbearer, but I will.
Have you played
one
Burning
day.
Wheel?
Yeah, I've played Burning Wheel and Mouseguard. Mouseguard a lot, Burning Wheel just once or twice.
I think Torchbearer is actually more similar to Mouse Guard than to
Oh.
Burning Wheel. Yeah,
Okay.
in terms of it's not in terms of its tone, but in terms of the system. But it's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, it's good.
Tone is really off.
Yeah.
So, why do you design games, Jack? Why not stick only with playing games? What got you into designing new stuff or your own stuff?
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I don't know. It's for a long time. I think me and my friends would play a lot of games, as many of us do, and we play video games, and we play board games, and we play role-playing games, and we play a mix of everything. And I do a lot of, as I mentioned, I do a lot of work on computers. I know my way around a bit of code, so we did quite a lot of video game jams. I've been doing them for years and years and years. And these are sort of, often they are a couple of days every weekend or something, and you cram it in, you sit there and you eat too many bad snacks, and stay up too late and drink lots of coffee, but you make some game over the weekend, and it's a total mess, but it's a lot of fun. Like me and my friend Chris and often my friend Gavin, we kind of a trio. Like I did lots of code and a bit of game design. Gavin is an artist, and Chris does a lot of music and sound design. So we join together and make these games every weekend. And a lot of that came from, I don't know if you've seen, there's Anna Anthropy has this book called Rise of the Video Game Scenesters.
Yes, I think who talked with me about Hannah Entropy? I think it was like last week, the Bakers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool. I haven't had a chance to look at that
I don't have sure because it was a really long conversation last week. But
I saw.
I think it was Hannah Entropy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So she basically put out this book, and it's about video games, but it's basically I mean, I'm doing a synopsis of a massive, really good book. Well, it's quite a small book, but a really good book. But basically, the message that I took away from it was, you don't need to be a big game design studio with hundreds of thousands of pounds to
Yeah.
make a game. You can just go and like use a bunch of tools that are out there, make something cool, and put it out there, and that's cool. But then, so that's happening. Playing RPGs. Never really thought about making anything for an RPG. We played around with some board game designs at times, but they're quite difficult to design.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is difficult to design, but board games, lots of moving parts in that way. Nothing really clicked. Nothing really took off. And then being a father meant that I just can't do 2 days concentrated game jams anymore. I can't say to my wife, I will be back in 2 days. I need to go and eat a load of snacks and drink a load of coffee and get exhausted. If I get 2 days off by some miracle, I want to sleep for 2 days. I don't want to be staying up all night designing video games. So one of the amazing things about tabletop game design is that you can do it. It's much easier to do it in small chunks all over the place and kind of as you go. And so that was kind of floating around. I also got into indie games. So we started playing Dungeon World, which almost doesn't feel like an indie game anymore. It's so big, but
I get you.
We grabbed a couple of other things. This whole scene exploded. And then the big kind of spark for me was the itch.io becoming a platform for physical games, which meant that you can go from, idea to design to publishing with almost no friction, no setup costs, nothing. So Takuma Okada, they put out this game called All Alone in the Ancient City, which I came across, I think through a podcast recommendation. And I just checked out their page and I was like, this is amazing. And I had this thought, which was like, I feel like I could make things in this space. And that's where it started. So yeah, it's this barriers coming down basically.
Yeah, we see that design was always there, constant in your life, throughout the game design, board game, throughout with your friends, which it sounds like a very good team. An art guy, a code guy, and the last one was
a music and sound design.
One. Yeah, that's so. You have.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's great. Unfortunately, we all live in totally different places now. We used to live around the corner from each other, but one of my friends lives in Tokyo. One of them lives in London, and I live in Southampton now. So Tokyo's a bit further away.
Yeah, Tokyo is.
Yeah, but we still managed to make it work.
That's awesome. And then you got into role-playing design, mainly through itch.io, right? The platform.
Yeah, I think that's the, because you look at DriveThruRPG and there's loads of indies there. So that I don't know. It doesn't have that.
It feels different
because it feels different. Yeah, it doesn't feel as. I feel like on itch.io you can put something out there, and it can be your life's work or it can be a joke. And both of those are fine.
Yeah.
It has that vibe.
Somehow it feels different. I didn't yet understood why, but often people have. It feels more accessible to make stuff and publish it at itch.io.
Yeah, I think for me, I haven't sat down and thought about this at length, but for me, one of the big differences is that DriveThruRPG is like a place to sell games. And itch.io is a place to sell games and a community. Yeah. So it very much feels like you've got the game jams on there, you've got very active blogs, you've got a really great forum. So there's like, it's a bit of more of a home. I think probably the game jams are the biggest part of what makes it feel different, because it's, but yeah, DriveThruRPG is just, you go there and you buy games. And it feels like a product of the 2000s. It doesn't feel like a product of the sort of late, the 2019s, 2018s.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe the reason why DriveThru feels different from itch.io or vice versa is the community aspect of it, and probably, yeah, I think you are right, Jack. Because each is a community that then you can publish your stuff there as a community, as a platform, and yeah, you don't have the community thing over at Drive 2. It's different. It's
No.
That's
Yeah,
really.
I mean, I put a couple of my games over on Drive Through now. Yeah, they sell, and it's a good place to sell games. It's a great place, but it's not. I don't. I've never had a conversation on Drive Through. I've never. Yeah, it feels like you have to be a bit more. You have to have your stuff together a little bit more.
I see. So, regarding your games, let's talk about your games, the ones you've designed. Give us like a brief presentation of your games and how did they lead to each other?
Sure. Yeah. So I think all of them are kind of hacks or expansions for existing games. That's something like I think that I've gotten a little bit more confident as I've gone on. But the first game I published was a playset for Dialect. So Dialect is an amazing game. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, I did not yet played it. It's from the same publisher who've made Sign, which is a awesome game. Dialect is also a nominee for the best product.
For an Annie, right?
Yeah, for a lot of Annies. And the most important one, the most important ones, which are the best game and the product of the year. Yeah, they are nominees for that.
And I got the little physical book and the cards, and it's such a beautiful product as well. I know that's
Tell us what's the game about? Dialect.
Dialect itself is a game. They call it a game about language and how it dies. So already, if all you play is Dungeons and Dragons, you're thinking, what the hell is this? A game about language? But essentially, it's about a community, an isolated community of some sort, and the language that they have that is contained within that community, how that language develops, and then how that community is changed or threatened or broken, and how the language shifts and evolves and eventually dies as a result. So this could be a team of Mars scientists that get stranded and come up with their own lingo for stuff on Mars, or it could be a bunch of thieves with their own thieves chant, their thieves cant, and little kind of signs and that sort of thing. So it can be anything about a sort of community within a big community, and the way you play it is through these sort of three kind of fairly defined acts, and at the end of each of those acts, you choose how the community changes based on external forces. So if you're master scientists, maybe you get a message from home, and you're like, oh wow, more people are coming. So what are we going to do? Or something breaks, and you think, okay, with our little community, is it really under threat here? And you talk about how you react to that. And you play it out in scenes, you have characters, but it's all framed through this creation of language and kind of, yeah, it's great. I don't know if that's a good explanation.
It seems like somehow Tony Games, they like to make games about language or communication. Yeah, they really like to develop and to explore that space, which is important nowadays in a very virtual world, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the play sets is about an online community, like, and the slang that they have and how that can break down over time.
Wow.
It's cool. Like, it's one of the really cool things about it is the kind of I keep wanting to say artifacts of play because that's what they are, but it's obviously the name of one of my games. But the artifacts of play are these bits of language, and after you've played it, you end up with all these words that you've either repurposed or made up, and they really stick with you. So we played this game ages ago, and you see your friends, and sometimes you still like jokingly slip in some of the language that you made together because it's like your own little secret code. It's very cool.
It sounds cool,
Um,
guys. Yeah. So you have made something for dialect, right?
Yeah, so
Talk
yeah,
about.
that's a long way to go around. So I I
Are we
really like
talk? Are we
dialect.
talking about Underditch? Just to make sure.
Underditch,
Okay,
yes,
let's
Underditch.
go.
Yeah, so I really liked playing dialect, but I guess this seems kind of dumb, but I I like a lot of people like fantasy, and there
Mhm.
wasn't really a fantasy setting for
Oh.
Underditch. Because they did the interesting thing and did everything else. They did Mars and like thieves and all sorts of other exciting things, and they didn't bother doing fantasy because fantasy's been done a million times before. And so I came along and I said, why don't we do fantasy? Um, but what it's about basically is it's one of these play sets that you use to kind of theme the game that you're playing in normally in one sitting, and it's about basically a group of monsters who are threatened by humans arriving into their land,
Mm-hmm.
and they go underground. They go into the underditch, and then they're sealed off in this space, and they try to make themselves their own life, and they kind of they try to figure things out. And the kind of key questions are about: do you essentially the two paths that I created for this game is do you go up or do you go down? So if you go up, you're saying some of the young in your clan have decided that they don't want to live underground anymore. They're going to go up and see what it's like, and meet whatever fate happens up there. If you go down, you discover something like an egg, and your clan changes to become basically worshippers of this thing. I'm kind of thinking about kobolds basically in this instance. Kobolds love dragons. It's
Yeah,
that
yeah.
sort of thing. So that's the theme of this game, and we've play tested it once, and it was a lot of fun. We went down, so we discovered a big golden egg, and it changed a lot of things. So that was really good fun, and I think if anybody hasn't designed a game before, designing a expansion or a hack like a playset of a game is a great way to start because it's a lot less work. You don't have to write any rules, but to do it well, you really have to understand why the game is good in the first place and
Mm-hmm.
what it needs. You can't, you have to understand how all the pieces work together, which is a good kind of way to get you thinking about that stuff. Um, so
That's
yeah,
gold.
that was Underditch, and Underditch was done for a game jam, which is a theme that you'll probably notice in my games. So the next game that I designed was called The Fickle Loom.
The fickle
Um,
loom, right?
yeah, that's a bit of a mouthful. Um,
Can you tell me what is a fickle? I should probably search that before the show, but yeah, I'm that honest.
so fickle is an adjective. So fickle means oh god, now I've got to use a dictionary. But fickle is
Oh.
like your mood swings and you can't make your mind up and you agree to something and then you disagree.
Oh.
So yeah, you're changing frequently, especially as regards to one's loyalties or affections. So if someone's fickle, they say they're your best friend and then they're your worst enemy or something. They stab you in the back or something like that.
Okay, I
Um,
see, I see. Like an
and
inconsistent opinion
yeah,
and
exactly.
feelings towards something or someone.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And the loom part comes from weaving stories basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, so the fickle loom is basically about folklore because it was created for the folklore jam.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than being about a specific piece of folklore, it's a game in which you create a story as a table, and then you change that story over and to represent how folklore changes over time. So I listen to a couple of really good podcasts. One's called Lore, and one's called Myths and Legends, and they basically take a popular folklore story and they explore how it was originally told and how it changed over time and how it ended up. So something like often they end up as Disney movies. So like Red Riding, Sleeping Beauty, or
Mm-hmm.
is a great example. So if you read the original or the kind of earliest recorded version of Sleeping Beauty, which isn't even the original because it was probably told verbally before
Yeah,
that. There's some really messed up stuff in that story.
there are.
And the same is true of pretty much any fairy tale, especially the ones that Disney movies are based on. If you look at the history of that tale, there's all sorts of weird and wacky stuff that's happening. What I really wanted to do was have a game where you create like the outline of this story that's full of all this crazy wacky stuff, and then you go through it and you change the story to kind of edit it and make it cleaner and have like a more moral narrative, and end up with something that might be a Disney movie. So you kind of, but you as a table have this memory of what the story used to be like. So it's kind of a hack of Microscope, which is I don't know if you've played that game.
Yeah. Oh, yes, yes. Man, you are hitting my vibes. Really.
We have the same taste. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah. It's here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that on, and I've played it here on stream, and
Oh, cool.
I've talked about a lot of. There's one participant on RP Genesis, which will be making an egg. I didn't know that
Oh,
Fickle
awesome.
Loom was an egg from Microscope.
Yeah. So it's certainly, I certainly use all the structure of that game. So the
Yeah,
idea
I
of like,
see.
because if you think about in Microsoft, you have this timeline that works quite well as like a kind of storyboard. So you can,
Yeah.
as a group, you can put in different scenes in different places, but then the kind of difference is that those are not fixed. So you can in later sort of turns, you can change things. You can get rid of a scene. You can change the focus of a scene, and yeah,
You can
It's-
play
that's kind of the idea
whatever
of that game.
order
Yeah, you can move things around.
Yeah,
Chronology, yeah.
move things around. That's a question I
Move
can
things
use.
around. Yeah.
Oh, and
Yeah.
by the way,
As I said, my job.
so go. Your job?
My job is trying to explain things in the most simple way possible.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't say chronology. I say
you-
move things.
You are good at that, man. So regarding that thing, that subject of a story being retold and Disney,
Mhm.
I actually have a take on that since
Mhm.
I'm an animator and I study animation history, animation, and
Mhm.
Disney was from some animators and other studios. They were criticized because of that, because they were retolding a story in a very not smooth but
Sanitized.
way. So
Yeah.
studios like UPA, which no longer exist, unfortunately, they pointed fingers at Disney that it's your fault. It's like there's an expression that nowadays movies, not nowadays, but before, movies were always the same. They had always the same vibe because of Disney, and that kind of touches that subject of how change is a story can be from mouth to mouth and ear to ear.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of experience we are going to simulate in Fickle Loom, right?
That's the idea. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's my first full game design in that it's the first actual game I made rather than an expansion. So
It's not
we've
a
played
supplement.
I've only
It's a
played
game
it
itself,
once.
right?
Sorry.
It's not a supplement. It's a game itself.
It's a game itself.
A full game. Awesome.
A full game. Yeah.
You've played once.
I've only play tested it once, but we had a good time, and it met the design goals I was going. But I was in the game, so I maybe steered it that way. Yeah, that's the idea. I just think that's a really interesting concept. It's similar to that dialect thing of only you know the kind of language of that community that's dispersed. When you finish telling your tale, you're the only people that know what the original tale was like and all these weird things that happened in it. And the tale that you're finished with is this really clean kind of Disney storyline, potentially.
Okay, I see. Awesome.
Yeah. So so both those games had artwork from my friend Gavin, which is always good fun. So Fickle Loom and Underditch.
Gavin is your
He
friend
did the artwork.
over from
He lives in
those.
Tokyo.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, Zootopia. The Zootopia.
no, Tokyo.
Oh, Tokyo. Okay, the guy that.
So, yeah, the same friend. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So you are you have a long journey together.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So he's made some little illustrations for that, which was super cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Fickle Loom was really hard for me to design.
Why?
It took a long time. I designed a lot of it. I mean, I design all my games pretty much in pieces all over the place, and sometimes that's great. I mean, sometimes it's the only way I can do it, but sometimes it can be quite difficult to kind of get the whole idea in your head. And as anyone who's tried to make a thing knows, you have to go down to a lot of dead ends before, and sometimes you can put a lot of effort into those dead ends before you realize it's not the right way to go. So I definitely tried a lot of different things out. So Fiasco is another kind of influence in Fickle Loom. So there's lots of dice tables in Fickle Loom. So again, it's quite difficult to say to somebody, make up a fairy tale, and have it be interesting. So a lot of the original kind of outline of the tale is done through dice tables and picking out dice in kind of a similar way to the way you do setup in Fiasco.
Beautiful.
But that way of doing that and how that then transitioned into the kind of scene picking out and editing was a really difficult thing to figure out. And I did about, I don't know, probably 10 different ways of doing that. I made a bunch of tables that I never used. And then I literally made my next game, Your Baby is Crying, in a lunch break.
Oh, that's quite good to know. Your baby is crying. Hopefully not now.
I have my noise cancelling headphones, which is special permission from my wife. She's taking one for the team tonight.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he does cry a lot. But
so
I mean,
was that the inspiration for Your Baby is Crying?
What's that?
Was
the inspiration?
Yeah, your own experience, the inspiration.
Oh yeah, big time.
Tell us about that.
So Your Baby is Crying was a game that I created for the Not a Game Jam, which is an interesting one. So the whole point of the Game Jam is that people spend a lot of time and an exhausting amount of time arguing about what is or isn't a game. Right? Yeah, I don't know if you've come across this, especially on Twitter. It's just like people having the same argument about when something is a game and when it's not a game.
Yeah, and we are on RPG Theory July, so
yeah,
there's a lot of that.
There's even more of that going on at the moment. So I'm like, a game is a thing that you have fun together playing. So I totally it's a very sorry. That's a really bad definition, because games can be not fun and still valid. So even I'm getting tripped up trying to be brief with this stuff. But anyway, so the idea with Not a Game Jam was to create something that didn't look like a traditional game or didn't play like a traditional game, had something about it that didn't feel like challenged the idea of what a game could be. So I thought, what is a game that you cannot win? And hey, it's when your kid's crying and you try literally everything to stop them crying and nothing works, and eventually they stop crying. And that was the inspiration for this game. And any other parents out there, we know what we're doing. There are lots of things, there are good reasons that babies cry, but also sometimes they just cry. And so the inspiration for this game was those moments when you've checked your baby's nappy, they're not hungry, they're not cold, all these other things, but they're still crying. And there's nothing you can do about it. So one of the things in this game is that you roll some dice to see what sort of crying baby you have. You draw a little picture of your baby, and you put it on, you tape it onto your phone or something, and you look at your phone and your baby, and you just try and tell it things to stop it crying. You play this video that's just a looping video of a baby crying.
How long?
And you put it on. I think it's like 15 hours. And the crucial thing is that your phone or whatever it is, your laptop, has to be unplugged from power, and then eventually it dies of battery, and then you can go to sleep.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's
But in the meantime, you can say also, oh dear, yeah, oh dear, and you know.
I like how you've wrote choose one of the following phrases, and if you read the phrases and check, they are more desperate from the top to the bottom. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
and all of them from me or my partner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, pretty much anyway.
Yeah.
We've all seen these things at some time. Yeah, so that was something that was quite cathartic to write.
It's quite awesome because it totally fits within the subject of not a game jam game jam.
It's a bit of a mouthful, yeah.
Yeah. It totally fits within the question: is this a game or it isn't, and whatever it is, and yeah,
It's certainly not fun.
it's certainly not somehow, but there are some weird people out there that might find fun there.
Hey,
I do believe.
if they want to look after my kid for a night, they can take their pick.
And Jack, and you have managed somehow to still make not a game, which is but a game, and a game or not a game where you can't win but you win.
Yeah.
You have
It
made
doesn't feel like winning.
it doesn't it doesn't feel like winning, but you win but you can't win.
But you are victorious.
Yeah, you are victorious.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Good job. Congratulations, like
Yes.
you wrote.
Yeah.
And
You can
it's
collapse
available
now.
for free. The Your Baby is Crying. Right?
Yeah, I didn't feel like I could charge any money for that.
That's quite interesting because I do have an example from the same game jam, not a game jam. You probably know
Is this Nora Blake's
Nora
game?
Blake's game, of course.
Yeah, amazing.
That statement was awesome, and you guys there probably don't know, but Nora Blake is a great designer, a very strong and present at Itch.io and Twitter, and oh, I don't remember now I have an issue. Nora Blake made a game. Nora Blake made a not a game to the not a game jam, which the title was not a game. This is not a game. I think it's
Yeah,
right.
this is not a game.
This is
yeah.
not a game. Charging $200.
Yep.
It was the perfect statement. But
It's
I
a
find
good bit of art.
yeah, it's. I don't know if someone bought it, but it's crazy.
I hope somebody did. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. I hope somebody did.
You hope, okay.
Yeah.
And then Nora Blake did put it on promotion, and not 90%. So I think now
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still up, but you can buy This Is Not a Game for $20, which is crazy.
So cheap.
So cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
There's
crazy.
some really good stuff in that game jam. Like Riley Rethel has a game in there. I think it's just called Love. And it's just like one sentence and it's like, you know how this works.
Oh,
That's it. A more serious one. God, I need to find who it's by, but it's basically a game about we can get together and play a game or something like this, and it's basically the horrendousness of trying to schedule games.
Oh, I see.
Which I'm sure
I saw that. I saw that.
it's great.
I also saw a game, which is not a game, right? The part where after you get together, the time that you choose a game, like that, everyone wants to play different game, and
Yeah.
now how to pick one, how to choose one. So someone made a
Yeah.
game, that game, which is not a game, and yeah.
Yeah. It was Evan. I think it's Nyquist. Anyway, Nyquist. Evan made this game called. Okay, there's got to be some time when we're all free, right? which it spoke to me personally as someone who's tried to schedule an RPG game before. Oh,
Which is hard. Damn.
damn! Try being a parent and doing it. It's even
Oh,
harder.
that's hardcore level.
Yeah, so that game was great. So yeah, loads of good stuff in that one. And then I had a bit of a break, only a couple of weeks, I think. And then my own game jam started, so I felt like I probably ought to make something for that. So I had this idea, inspired by all the other amazing game jam, to create a game jam called Legacy Jam.
Yes.
Which, if nothing else, sounds like a very tasty jam. But it's basically you could take legacy two ways. It's either about time and consequence, or it's about inheritance and kind of expectation. So the game's around those sort of themes, and it was great. We've had I think we had something like 32 submissions or something, and a bunch of people joined. It was really good fun, and looking through everyone's submissions, I still want to go through and play a load of them, but I just haven't had the time. But someday I will. But the game I made for that was called the Artefact, which has been a lot of fun.
So before we go deep in the Artefact, I'm interested in exploring Legacy Jam. How was the process of now Itch.io is a very good tool and platform for that. It makes it has a lot of tools and options, right, to make quickly a jam. How was your process of hosting, announcing, and sharing a Legacy Jam?
Something that I'm prone to do with games and with this as well is I get an idea for something. I'm like, I should do a game jam. Oh, maybe about legacy, like, because time and kind of that sort of thing is really interesting to me. And then what I do is, before I do anything else, I sit there in a frenzied state with like Illustrator and a bunch of color palettes, and I make a bunch of stupid art, and I make like I make like a cover or like an icon, and I'll spend like hours tweaking it and doing different versions of it. And a lot of the time I do that and nothing ever comes of it, or I end up reusing it in some other project. But that was the start of Legacy Jam for me. It was creating the header image that I put on the jam page, which is like a skull with a crown on it, which I thought was cool. I found the image on the British Library and I thought, this is a wicked image. This is good for Legacy Jam. I'll make this. And my kind of I read a really good. I feel like I'm going off another tangent here, so I'll park that for a sec. But one of the important things in the world that we live in is that most of the social media that we use to promote things, visuals are everything. So you can write the most amazing thing in the world, but if you don't have good visuals, nobody's going to care. You need to have something that, as people are scrolling down, they stop and they think, "What's that?" Like. So the fact that I led with this wicked image, and then it got really good traction. It got retweeted by Itch.io. It got quite a few like well-known game designers kind of retweeted it, and we got loads of people joining it, which was wicked. So that was kind of the way in. I think was having something that stops people scrolling on their feed long enough to look at a nice image and then maybe read something that you wrote. Which is all you can expect in today's economy.
Indeed.
Yeah, so it was really fun running it. Ben Flowers and Arthur, I can't remember his surname, but they ran Folklore Jam. They gave me some really good advice on how to run a game jam. But actually, it wasn't super difficult. It was just, you make a cool pitch, and then you watch all the cool ideas roll in, basically.
Yeah, and Itch.io helps a lot, right?
Oh yeah, big time. You'd never be able to do it yourself.
No.
I mean, I could make a game jam website somewhere, but nobody would care. It's about having it there is wicked. There's some funny things about Itch.io. So people, I think people like the visibility that comes from being part of a jam. So you get all sorts of weird submissions that are nothing to do with what you intended. So I got some really naff, awful video games just submitted to my jam.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, so I chatted with the folklore jam guys, and they were like, "Oh yeah, this happened to us too. Like we just remove them. Like if it's relevant enough, you can have a conversation with them about it. If they've just posted it to try and get someone to look at it, you just get rid of it."
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, so people just
Yeah.
the money, the pot of money in tabletop RPGs is so much smaller than in video games.
Yeah.
But there's also far fewer people doing things in it, so it's much easier, or it's more easy to get your stuff known. I think in video games, like getting anyone to pay any amount of money for anything you make, or even look at it, is like virtually impossible. So people try all sorts of weird tricks.
Because it's crazy since it's understandable and relatable once you've joined a game jam to see each other work and even buy each other work. It's like a relationship which is relatable and understandable, and that's wild. So people know about that relationship and they explore it. Wow, that's crazy, man. Okay, I see.
It's not a big deal. It's just quite funny when you're. I think the
do
crushing thing for me was the first submission, and I was like, oh, "My first submission! This is so exciting!" And I went to look at it. What is this?
Oh
This
no!
is like It looks like a SNES game. It's like really badly put together, and like, why is it a video game? Like, this isn't what I wanted.
That's sad, man. The first one.
Yeah. But like the next day, Riley Rathel submitted her game. It was amazing. So I was like, yes, this is great.
Do you have now? I should not make this question, but I will. Do you have a favorite one, apart from Artefact, obviously? Do you have like?
I definitely wouldn't pick my own game.
Yeah. But do you have like a favorite or not favorite, but a game that surprised you the most?
I think the one that kind of blew me away was, and I haven't really had the time to go through all of them yet, but
of course.
there's a guy called Sorbet, who South Africa, and he made a game called Draw, and the artwork in that game is amazing.
Yep.
And all through the game jam, we were chatting, and he was posting these just images with incredible artwork and a quote, and I think they work in a team with another designer. So while they were designing this game, they were just posting their artwork, and it's really cool.
Looks really cool.
It's very cool.
And
yeah, I was just checking his pronouns, but he is a he, him, so we'll get there.
How awesome it is to host a jam and see awesome games being created by something you've prompted. Remember, we've talked about prompts in Fall of Magic. You were the scroll. How does that feel?
I am the scroll.
You are the scroll.
Great. Yeah, it's really good fun. Yeah, it's you feel like the smallest part of a big creative move, which is enough to feel really good.
That's awesome.
Especially when people make. I think if you believe that someone has made something they wouldn't have made had your thing made them go, oh, it's interesting. That's like the best feeling in the world.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Go along. I would just say like it must feel awesome, and I hopefully will feel that way after the game jam. Hopefully. Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
So you also in your game jam you are crazy and made a game. Your submission, right? I think it's part of the process, like hosting and making, even if it's for example, right?
Yeah, I think you wouldn't generally make a game jam unless you were really interested about it anyway. So
yeah,
I had a bunch of ideas that I could have gone with.
Oh yeah, but before talking about Artefact, because I want to go deep,
Okay.
We are already touching the importance of game jams. And how do they help? Yeah, we already talked about it. We will not repeat it. But is there any topic or subject or thing you want to add in the topic of game jams do help people design stuff and create stuff?
I think, I mean, they definitely do. I think most people, in my experience, need some sort of time pressure to actually make something. If you have, if you're writing a novel, if you're doing any kind of artistic or creative exploit, if you don't have some sort of deadline and some sort of brief, no matter how thin or how loose they are, it's almost impossible to actually prioritize it and make it something that you're going to do. In my experience, that's certainly how I work anyway. So having a game jam where you know that I need to get this done by this time, otherwise my game can't go in that game jam, and being inspired by the theme of it and the restrictions that the game jam puts on you, all of those things I think are very useful to actually get a design finished and done. And I think that the nature of game jams being short, tabletop RPGs are not normally designed over a week or 2 weeks.
No.
Means that that you're going to the barrier is lower, so that you can put something out there that is a first version of something that you're really inspired by, and you've got it done, it works, it's a thing, and maybe you take it on and do more with it, maybe you don't, but you've done it, you've done your first draft basically. And that it's the same with NaNoWriMo, right? Like, the novel writing thing that happens every year. Like, if you have the push to get something done in a fixed time, you do it. If you don't, it just carries on and you never finish it. You rewrite it, you start again, you throw it out, do something else. So yeah, game jams, I think if you're interested in design, Rami Ismail, I think that's how you pronounce his surname, he designs video games. He's designed all sorts of wicked video games like Nuclear Throne, and there's a big one that I'm forgetting, some Ridiculous Fishing. Anyway, he's designed loads of wicked games along with the guy he works with. He has this advice for making video games, which is basically just make loads of games. So don't try and focus and make the amazing project, your magnum opus, however you say that. The first game you make is not going to be the Dungeons and Dragons killer. It's just not. Like, you have to make loads of stuff and play around and explore different ideas and make lots of things that don't work, I think, and eventually you'll get there.
Yeah, and not be afraid of making stuff and publishing. I'm always saying and repeating this, so that here in Portugal we develop that design and creative skills and community. Game jams do help a lot. Deadlines help a lot, because with no deadlines you never finish anything. At least in any animation shots you need deadlines, because they are not perfect. There's always something to add, and everywhere, mainly in creative process and creative things, they never end. So coming do you want to add something?
No.
Coming back to games itself, the Artefact. Can you show us physically how the Artefact looks?
Yeah.
And tell us what's the game about.
So I'm lucky enough that it made sense to print the game out. So there it is. It's not a big book, but I really like it because you can draw in the book. So it's not a massively expensive game, but I designed it so that you can get a pencil and write in the book. So you could, a lot of the game is drawing and writing little stories. So I just quite like the idea of it being like a little gift that you could, rather than, you can obviously do it in a journal or whatever. It's quite nice to like have a little thing you can actually play around with. So the Artefact, it fits.
Yeah, it fits in the... I know that you've made the game jam Legacy regarding the time aspect, right? but it fits in the legacy aspect of the board game we now have, of playing it once, and is that experience. So we can play Artefact as a legacy artifact.
Yeah.
The game
Yeah,
is an artifact itself.
Again, this is kind of a theme of all of the games, but you end up with like a thing, right? You end up with like, I'll talk about the game more later on, but you end up with a thing, and you can look back at it, and it's there's an artifact of play, which again, there's got to be a better word for that. So I'm repeating the game title, but as people use this term of artifacts of play, as in things that live on past the game, and I like the fact that you've got this little thing that you've drawn and some stories you've written and that sort of thing.
So what's Artefact about?
So in a normal kind of fantasy role-playing game, you play a bunch of adventurers and you go and do brave things, and you go around and maybe you kill a guy and take his sword, or you come across a cool shield, you know. It is normal in fantasy games. It's not normal in normal life. Don't kill people and take their swords.
No,
or anything, really. Don't kill people. But yeah, so then you have that cool sword. You have it for a while. Maybe it breaks. Maybe you get a better cool sword and you throw the other one away. The focus is very much on the heroes. So the artifact spins that round, and the focus is on the item. So you inhabit the sword, or you inhabit the shield, or the instrument. You are seeing that item, and you're seeing it through all the different people that pick it up and use it over massive amounts of time. So you get made at some point. Somebody makes you, and you're fresh and new. And an important part of this is that you're a sentient magic item, so you know a little bit about what's going on in the world. You've got a personality. You can talk to your wielder, and so you kind of perceive the world through the person that picks you up and does stuff with you. And then over time, as you play through the game, maybe people do really cool big things with you, or maybe people do really terrible things with you, or maybe both. And you get a reputation, and you get a cool name. You know, all of the cool weapons in fantasy literature and that sort of thing have a cool name.
Yes.
And then eventually, if you play the game through, you end up to the point where you get broken, you get damaged, you get lost, you get eaten by a gelatinous cube, and you know, eventually you just rot at the bottom of a well somewhere, and that's it.
It's a sad story.
It is a sad story. It's not a good life being a weapon.
Yeah, I agree.
But the game is played on your own, which is kind of a unique, not unique by any means, but it's an unusual thing in role-playing games still.
Yeah,
to some extent.
So it's a solo RPG. It's a solo experience.
Yes. So there's no reason why you couldn't play it with somebody else and have a conversation. But it's designed to be a solo play. It's playable on your own, basically.
And why do you say that? Like, I'm really interested on exploring. You can play with others and have a conversation, obviously. And as from what I read, which was everything. Sorry, it's great, man. So from what I've read, the game does not stop you from playing with others. And probably I'm announcing here that I will play it on stream. It was intended to play yesterday, but yeah, big RPG meeting and event, and it just it didn't happen. But I will play it here on stream,
and that'll be wicked. I'll definitely jump in.
Yeah, I'll play it here, and hopefully some of the choices the chat will make them, and I will just funnel it. But yeah, so the game. It will be a different experience from the one you design, obviously. The game does not stop you to play with others, but yet you say something very interesting. That is, there are some things there, specifically for playing alone. And by the way, a lot of people mistake solo RPGs as a game with a game master and one player. This is not. This is not that type of game. It's a game for one player GM at the same time. It's one person, one player. Don't get confused. Yeah, a lot of people get confused. I don't know why. But yeah, why do you say what's in Artefact that really promotes the solo experience?
So you'd bring up games where you play with just one player and one team, and that's a very intimate experience, and there are certain design constraints that are put on by that. But fundamentally, you still have one person who is in some way in charge of the and one person who's kind of making decisions on behalf of some sort of character or something. So when you design a game for just one person, you have to think very clearly about there's nobody here to say, you win or you lose. So you have to make that choice interesting enough for the person who's playing it that they won't just go on a power trip or whatever, or constrained enough. So a big part of that is prompts, as we keep coming back to. So you write prompts in a way that you give people enough freedom to, or you try to give people enough freedom to tell an interesting story that's unique to them, without letting them go so off the rails that you'd need somebody else to say, okay, we'll throw out this book and we'll do our own adventure, because they need to kind of be able to continue playing. So for instance, if one of the first prompts was you're destroyed and you don't exist anymore, then it's very difficult to carry on playing from that point.
Probably.
So the whole thing has to be designed with that. People have to be able to play through this thing on their own. And the reason I wanted it to be a solo game is kind of twofold. One, I think it's thematically appropriate. You're not a party of adventurers. You're a thing. You're on your own. And two is that the nice thing about designing a solo game is that it's really easy to playtest.
That's true.
Properly playtesting a game is even harder than scheduling a game of an art, which is already one of the hardest things that humanity has tried to do. Convincing your friends not only to come together and play something, but to play something that probably won't work is really hard. It's really hard. Even if they're very good friends, they're not going to do it too many times before they're like, can we just play something that we know is fun? Because playtest, the first time you play a game, you get about 2 minutes into it and someone goes, but can't I do this? And you're like, oh, none of my game works. I'm sorry. We can all go home now. That's my experience anyway.
Well, so, backup plans.
Yeah. So solo RPGs are great because you can play it a bunch and make sure it at least kind of works. And then convincing other people to play it on their own and just, hey, if you got an hour or two this week, can you play my game? That's really easy to do.
Beautiful.
So from a design perspective and from that kind of, it's a good thing to try as well.
From a streaming perception, is kind of awesome too. 1 hour, 2 hour. It seduces me.
It's a nice little bite-sized thing to do, and like you say, it's having someone to bounce ideas off doesn't really break that format.
Yeah,
it still works.
That's beautiful. So, can you tell us regarding designing a solo experience? It is easy to playtest, but what was the hardest design choice you have found at the development?
I think probably the hardest thing is writing prompts, as I kind of mentioned, that balancing act between letting it be expansive enough that you don't feel like you're forcing people to go down one storyline, because you want people to be able to do all sorts of crazy things with their story, because all sorts of crazy things happen to magical swords or whatever. But also you need it to hang together and actually work. So one of the ways that we kind of got around that, I say we, I was me, it was doing it in acts. So you kind of have act one where you put a lot of your prompts are about discovering things and newness, and act two are all about big great things and cool stuff happening, and then act three is all about degradation and breaking things. And that way, by putting people through that, you can kind of limit it enough to tell that arc of a story, which is the arc that I want to tell regardless of the story in between. But you give it some structure, basically. If you just let people pick across that whole list, and the thing got really broken, and then you tried to do something really heroic with it, like it can get quite, and then you're discovering some really obvious thing about it. It can be quite difficult to make that flow in a natural way. So that was definitely the hardest balancing act.
And there was any part that really surprised you, like when you design collaboratively, or even with someone who is making art, and there's always that ping pong and that negotiation, the conversation, and you are surprised by the input of the another person. When you are alone, that can happen, of course. You can design to find out, but what in Artefact, or if there was something, what in Artefact surprised you as you were developing it?
I think so. I kind of was like, this is going to take an hour to play, and you're going to write a few things about each keeper, and then you'll move on to the next person that finds you. And then it's tick boxes. It's quite a kind of speedy thing. Every single one of my playtesters and me wrote like epic, massive stories about each of their keepers and got really into it and started writing all these little stories, because you can. Nobody's stopping you writing quite detailed stories. So I got playtest reports back from people, and they were like, "My thing is so cool, and it's this ice sword, and like this guy found me, and he was this, and then his son, and I'm like, wow, okay, cool, you've like written a book." So that was definitely surprising. I didn't say anywhere, and so one of the things that I then had to change based on playtesting was to say explicitly, take breaks. And like you can play this game in two sessions if you need to, because if you write loads and loads and loads early on and you keep going at that pace, then by the time you get to the end, you're like, I'm exhausted, and you might not finish it in a satisfying way because you're a bit creatively exhausted.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
The thing that's
cool,
and we probably can explore this. The thing that, so you design a game about a thing, an object, right? An artifact. Which is a great word, and it's shiny, artifact. Oh, I click on it to see, of course, because it's shiny. So you've made a game of an object, and still where the adventures are not important, and you still have reports of playtesters and players that somehow give, I will put it in quotes, more importance, or they will give them a meaning that was not initially intentional, right?
I guess the focus is sort of, but it's when you're playing as an artifact, it's more about the perspective than the focus. So you're seeing through the eyes of this thing. So the keepers can be really interesting and do all sorts of interesting things. But the point is that at some point they die and you find another keeper. Yeah. You're not following their story. You're not living their story. You're living your own story. So I guess it was surprising that people got so into these bigger stories and the kind of wider world that they were creating. But it was very cool.
And it probably happens because we usually play that side, the side of the adventure. So we want to attribute meaning to them. Like I have almost the same example, but in a different way, Jack. I've designed dungeon art, which is like you are the dungeon, and you get rid of the adventures who invade you. And the playtesters start. Like, nowhere in the game I said the adventures are important. Nowhere. No. And somehow, people started to drag the game or make the game way longer than I intended, because they were giving meaning to the adventures.
Yeah.
It's crazy to see that. And now you have the same exact thing, and that's not a coincidence. That probably is because we usually play so much that side of the subject that we involuntarily give meaning to the keepers. I will not give meaning to them. They will die.
Okay. I think even outside of the game and games generally, we much more readily tell stories about people than things. So like things are a prop in a story about people. things are not the focus in any story. So I think generally we
makes
would
sense.
default to that in anything. But I look forward to your very short playthrough of the Artefact.
Oh, not short. Come on.
I'm joking.
No, I'll give some meaning. At least when I will be playing Artifact, I'll give the meaning that that character needs. You know, I'll try it. Maybe I fall in the trap. I don't know. And also, chat
You
will
get a
help me.
5-hour stream.
Chat will help me also. They will probably they will want to give more meaning to the keepers than I, and I will be the cataclysm. Hopefully. Hopefully.
You could play it. I haven't written it playing for a stream, but have you played For the Queen?
No, I did not play For the Queen yet.
So For the Queen is amazing. It's Alex Roberts' new game. But one of the things in that is you get a prompt and you say your response to that prompt, and then any other players can ask you questions about that. So that's quite a nice way to structure like with an audience, is to sort of you come up with a response, and then anyone about your keeper, and then anyone can ask you clarifying questions, and you could ignore them, but you can also, it's a really great game. But yeah.
From Evilet. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Evilet is awesome. But what's also awesome is coming back to the Artifact regarding we can get Artifact at your itch.io page, which I already posted over at chat, and in the YouTube description, doobly-doo, you can probably check the link. But we also, so we can get the PDF by $5 only, which is kind of awesome. Thank you, Jack. And we can, I think we still can get the physical one.
Yeah, so at the moment it's only stocked for UK store. I sold out my first print run, but I've got a few more coming, which is really cool. Like
Awesome.
I don't know, I don't do this, as I'm fortunate enough that I don't have to make a living out of this. So it's just wonderful to see something that you make in the places that you buy all your games. It's like, wow, next to all the games you really like, it's my game. That's amazing.
And yeah, Artifact was in the top of the physical games at itch.io, like some quite solid days. I don't remember how many days, but there were some quite solid days. The Artifact was the top of the physical games at itch.io. And but the question is, Jack, where can we? How can we get that physical copy? Do we talk to you? How can we manage that?
I think I haven't had a chance to do this yet, but I think you can add it as an itch.io page, a physical, because other people I've seen adding zines and stuff onto their itch.io pages, but it's not really built for that. But I think you can do that. But otherwise, DM me on Twitter, and I will hook you up.
Okay.
I also have some damaged copies which I can give you on the cheap.
Oh, that's nice to know. And I'll send you the link, and in the YouTube video the link of your Twitter will be there. And regarding I want to save this question for later. So Artifact is a solo RPG, and somehow I get the feeling that and it's not feeling, but itch.io show us that is showing us that solo RPGs are becoming a thing. And now I have to make like a PS or a disclaimer or a question to you. How we have people usually say, "Oh, solo RPG are not a new thing because we have fighting fantasies, right?" There, fighting fantasy books or the game books at 80s. But this is not the same thing. How different is Artifact from those experience, and why do you think that solo experience, solo role-playing games like Artifact and Alone with Your Ghost and some other games over at itch.io, which are different from fighting fantasies, are becoming a thing? Why do you think that?
I think that you can really clearly draw a linear, like fighting fantasy games and D&D type games. So like D&D, you're playing, it's a very mechanical focus predominantly, especially old school D&D. the focus. You're telling these stories, but a lot of the systems are to do with crunchy combat and skill checks and that sort of thing. And the game books that I remember from when I was a kid, where you have to turn to page that, and then you die, and then you accidentally turn back again, and okay, I won't. Um, those sort of games, I really feel like they are inspired by that sort of dungeon crawling, mechanics driven. Sometimes you roll a dice, and they're very much get through the thing. Whereas, and then also you're playing through someone else's story. Whereas a lot of the solo games that we see now on itch.io, like the Alone, like Takuma Okada's Alone in the Stars and Alone in the City, and all of the other amazing hacks of Alone games that have come out subsequently, and loads of other stuff. Those are just the most common ones that I see. They are tools for telling your own story. So they give you some prompts, or they give you some way of drawing cards, a tarot card or a deck of cards or a dice roll, or just a list of prompts, and you choose. They inspire you to write your own story, and that's much more influenced by story games than by like traditional role-playing games. And I think that's where that difference comes. So if you play things like Fiasco is a much more, and games of that ilk are much more influencing those sort of games than anything like D&D.
That's right. And why do you think why do you think it is becoming a thing? Why at least we see a trend coming out of this new wave. I like it to call it the new wave of solo RPGs or solo experience. What do you think is happening?
I'm not 100% sure, but I imagine it has something to do with the fact that we're all lonely, and it's really, really hard to get people together to play a game. So I had a weird thing where I was explaining this game to somebody, and they were like, "You play an RPG on your own? That's really odd." But the idea of playing a video game on your own is like totally normal.
Which is crazy. It makes that difference.
Or even writing a story on your own. Like, if you're an author and you wrote the story all on your own, like you didn't have like 4 of your friends came together and you wrote the story together. That's so weird. Like, so yeah, it's just a different way of thinking about it. But yeah, it's odd that it seems like a strange new thing when very clear analogs are totally normal.
That's a real. You said it. You nailed it. And yeah, it also we are coming back, always hitting in the same spot of how hard it is to manage a meeting and play together. And yeah, if you don't manage that, you have this new wave of solo RPGs. So if you don't manage to play with your friends Dungeons and Dragons, you can play the Artefact and probably have a better experience. I didn't say that, so
well, like I never want to. The point isn't to replace them, and you know this, right? Like there is playing with your friends is amazing fun, but also sometimes you can't do that. Playing something on your own, it lets you be creative, having to do all that scheduling. And the other thing is actually I had someone say they used the Artefact and they played about halfway, and then they stopped. And they had one of their players in their D&D game find the item. And then they carried on, which is really cool.
That's perfect.
Because all of this history of this item was known by the GM because they'd played this game. And kind of was really, they'd had this of coming up with backstory, and the player could then unearth that over time if they were interested.
That's perfect, Jack. Like, you are triggering me something very beautiful, which is I relate to prepless, or at least games that don't require planning. They require prepping, like PBTAs or even Fiasco, Microscope. I love that type of stuff now, even more than traditional role-playing games, which I feel. And this is a feeling I get. Please don't throw rocks at me, guys. I feel that when I'm planning a D&D session or more traditional role-playing game, I am playing alone, You see but I do not feel that I'm playing.
Hmm.
So I have here Artefact, where I can play a game and make an artifact for D&D or any other fantasy game, or Dungeon World, for example.
Anything, yeah,
Yeah,
obviously, yeah. But yeah.
it's triggering me that probably I would love in the future to see tools that to plan traditional sessions from traditional RPGs in the format of a game, of a solo game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That sounds fun.
that really sounds fun, because planning sessions, come on, they can be really.
And you're limited by your experience, right? So playing a game sometimes pushes you to do things that you might not do otherwise, because it's someone else's ideas and prompts that you might not think about otherwise.
That's true. No, and I have Watcher 81 at the chat saying we need to put Daniel, which is a guy from the team, playing this, because he is the one who makes every week an item for the D&D
Oh,
community.
cool.
So yeah, we're gonna oblige him, not oblige. We're gonna make him play this game.
Make him do it, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, as
Yeah.
long as he's happy.
Bromush said that's amazing idea. Thank you, Bromush. So coming back to the conversation and the artifact, there is one thing I would like to touch, and that's really up to you regarding how deep we can talk about it. When you open the PDF, the document, and hopefully you guys already bought it and have it on your downloads folder. So you have a very beautiful thing or paragraph that starts with safety.
Right, sure.
Let's talk about why here you felt the need. If you felt this need to write the safety text before the game, during the game, after a playtest and some feedback, and why did you felt that? Why is it so important? Because it feels important, right?
Yeah, so I think I genuinely think that every game should speak about safety in the rules, because even if you know your friends really well, it's good to have tools to explore things in a way that you can be sure that nobody's going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
So just generally, I think that making that explicit in the rules means that it's not obviously you can still ignore it, but it's not a one player being like, we should do these safety rules I found. You've made it part of the game, so it's in the rules. And I think that gives it a bit more weight maybe, and it makes it easier to bring it to the table. But with this being a solo game, obviously you're free to not suggest anything that you don't personally want to deal with, and all the other aspects of safety. You can put the direction of the story in the way to go within the constraints of the game. But the safety aspect that I did want to touch on is the concept of loneliness, because loneliness is very linked to lots of other things, as well as just being a rubbish thing to experience. It can be a real trigger for things like depression and that sort of thing. So this game is intentionally isolating. So this is a game where you play something that gets chucked aside and left at the bottom of a ditch for 100 years. So if you're feeling chucked aside and left at the bottom of a ditch, it might not be the best thing to sit down and start playing. So that's just, there's a bit of myself in this game, right? In that advice, being a new parent is quite difficult. You do end up spending more time on your own than you would previously. I don't hang out with my friends as much, that sort of thing. So it was thinking about that sort of isolating feeling. And yeah, I think it's important to mention.
And it's really beautiful, Jack. It shows us, the reader, that you are a careful person and a beautiful one, and thank you for writing safety and to make sure that this game So to suggest that if you are feeling this type of loneliness, which is a thing people tend to ignore, but it's a really important thing, don't play this game if you are feeling this, or go figure you out,
Yeah, so
and then
one of
come
my
back.
playtesters said that they were going to play it, and then they read that and they were like, actually, my partner's away at the moment, and I'm already feeling a bit rough about that, so I'll wait until they're back. And I was like, perfect, it's done its job.
That's beautiful, Jack. Thank you for writing this, and yeah, we are showing. Guys, come on, Jack is awesome. So this is beautiful. Thank you so much for writing. And other games or every game should have a paragraph or at least something about this. The game is about this, so if you feel like this or don't like this type of things, maybe consider it coming back later, or don't play at all. And if the designer is okay with that, it's awesome, as we can see. That's really beautiful. Really good. So, regarding Artefact, there was something over at Twitch, not Twitch, Twitter, that exploded, right? You've made a Twitter thread regarding the art of
the artwork, right? Yeah.
Talk about this. How was that? How did How was that experience?
So like it was partly it was partly just because I didn't want people to think that I'd drawn all this art myself, because that felt ingenuous. So if you have a look at the page, you'll see these amazing like line art drawings, and they're all done by people a long time ago whose work is now in the British Library and is freely available online. You can download these scans of books from the British Library. And so I know Illustrator fairly. I find it a nice hack if you're not an artist, and Gavin, my friend, was busy at the time, is to grab the artwork from the British Library, run it through Illustrator, do a bunch of stuff to it, and you basically can colorize it up and style it however you like. And you've got some art that, if it's this sort of game, like a fantasy type game with some cool old stuff in it, it's really appropriate. And so I thought, well, why not just make a little Twitter thread about how to do this? So I did. And it was really popular. Well, I went into quite a lot of detail, but yeah.
Guys, Jack is being humble. Like, you've shown the process step by step of how to make this incredible thing, which this style of artwork is awesome, and you've shared that knowledge freely with everyone. You are beautiful.
Well, it comes back to the thing I was talking about when I was talking about Legacy Jam, in that people don't care if you can have the most amazing game, but if it's not visually arresting, if you don't look at it and go, oh, well, that looks cool, nobody's going to care. That's best true. Game in the world will die if it's just a Google Doc that's unformatted. Nobody's ever going to look at it unless you're already a big famous designer. So this is a great way to, if you're not an artist and you're a designer, to very quickly get something that looks a lot better. And there's other ways to do it. There's Unsplash, which is a great image library that you can find some really cool free images. But it has to be visual. You have to make something that looks beautiful. Otherwise, nobody's going to care.
That's true.
Which is sad in a way, but it's
really
the world
sad.
we live in. And if it encourages people to make things beautiful, it's not the end of the world.
Well, what's the most important thing about this topic is that you've shared that knowledge freely with everyone, and hopefully and probably people are using that process to make their own stuff beautifully shown. Because we live in a world where thumbnails must be beautiful to click, unfortunately. But yes, it's true. And I'm gonna be honest, it happens to me. It happened to me. I've clicked on the artifact because it looked beautiful, even before knowing what the game was about. I saw your tweet. Your tweet. It looked really nice. I've clicked it, and I've been hooked. And I'm talking to you. So, in a way, thank you for making that art, that process that made this conversation possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's awesome. So, keep going. Talking about the future now. Can you reveal us what is or what will probably be your next game? Are you designing something right now?
Yeah. So I'm working on a design another game jam, which is perhaps not surprising. And that game jam is Dream Jam, which you
Oh,
may have seen.
no, wait. Now this is all. You are the host of the Dream Jam?
No, not the host,
Oh, okay.
but I'm designing a game for that jam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Now
not that.
now I was whoa! What a huge hole in my study preparation. I mean, okay. You are ranking the Dream Jam.
Mhm.
Can you somehow? Now I know the Dream Sword term.
Sword Dream.
Sword Dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Mhm.
Term is quite new, and I still don't yet understand it fully. Can you try to explain us what it is about? It is hard.
It is hard. It's a
Yeah.
new term,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's a kind of there's something about it being inspired by old school kind of crunchiness. But some of it seems like it's inspired by old school role playing. Some of it's nothing to do with that. To be honest, I think it's just a nice badge for the new wave of games that are coming out. And I'm not sure it can be anything more than that at the moment. I struggle with it because I'm someone who likes definitions.
Oh.
You know,
Yeah.
I like to be able to say this thing is this thing. This thing is what it means, because otherwise you get something which is called there's a psychology term called boundary objects, which basically means it's something that a community understands, but someone outside that community doesn't understand. So boundary objects are if I have a term that only my community uses, even if it's a normal word, it means something special to the community. If you're outside of that community, you have no idea what they're talking about. And Sword Dream is a bit like that, in that everybody goes like, "Oh, my my Sword Dream is this," but nobody's really explained what Sword Dream is, because everybody's keen not to define it too strongly because they want it to be very permissive.
Okay.
But the only concern with that is that then when someone who comes into the hobby or wants to start designing, they're like, "Can I say my thing is Sword Dream, or is it not? I don't know." So it's a really interesting space. But
Which
there's this great principles of Sword Dream, which are mainly about the kind of making things fair and equitable and just not racist and horrible, basically, and that's good. You know, I'm not going to argue with that. But it's a very broad definition at the moment.
Yeah, it's a place to explore, and I feel that the community is still trying to figure it out. But yeah, in conclusion, what you said, don't make games racist, or don't be a dick. Come on, right?
Yeah.
So-
But sometimes you need to spell it out for people.
Oh, yeah, and it should be spelled out over and over. We people need to be remembered often of that, unfortunately. But you are making a game, right? For Sword Game?
Yeah.
For Dream Jam.
So my game is a game that is inspired by Avery Alder's Dream Askew.
Really?
Yeah.
Dream Askew, Dream Apart?
Dream Askew, Dream Apart. Yeah. So Dream Apart is Ben Rosenblum's, I think, but I can't remember. Anyway, it's that framework. So it's a belonging outside belonging game, which I'm now realizing is another community inside a bigger community. There's a thread here. But it is about a community of people on a space station in a kind of sci-fi setting. So I don't know. Have you played Mass Effect?
No.
That's fine.
I know Mass Effect, but I didn't play it.
Have you heard of Star Wars?
Yes, of course.
So my references for this are really nerdy. So like, there's a thing in Star Wars books, in some of the books, called the Wheel, and basically the wheel is this space station where it's independent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not officially affiliated with the Rebels or the Empire. It's a neutral space, and there's similar things in Mass Effect. There's in Gundam. There's all over the place. You get this concept of like there's a big war going on, and there's this space station that's like a kind of tries to be a neutral space.
Mm-hmm.
So you get people from both sides there, but they're like they have to put tape over their guns, and they have to promise they won't get in any fights. And there's lots of criminals there because they want that space where they can do business. So that's the setting for this community. It's a community that exists inside a massive interstellar war, and they're dealing with all these pressures from criminal elements and just life on a space station, like things breaking, and they also are living in the kind of shell of an ancient thing. So the space station isn't newly built; they discovered it, so it was built by somebody else, and there's weird things on the station that they don't know what they are. So yeah, that's the game. It's called Dream Station. I have to get it finished by Friday, and there's a lot. The games are amazing, but there's so many prompts and pick lists to write for them that it's an enormous amount of work.
Wow.
Because the way you create your characters in Dream SQ and in my game is by going down a big list where you just choose from like 10 things, and then you choose from 10 things, and then choose from 10 things, which is a great way to make a character because you very quickly get all these cool ideas, but you can still create something really unique. But then actually writing out all those things takes forever.
Well, but
we're nearly there.
We are eager to see how Dream Station will be coming right at Friday, which is crazy.
Hopefully, yeah, if I can make it.
Yeah, it looks like nice, the mood board you have tweeted of Dream Station, and that Pinky Dream Station, which is really awesome. Dream SQ Dream Apart is right now also nominated for the best product of the year, and with good chances of winning because Avery Alder is awesome.
Yep.
So
I didn't do this intentionally, but it's good. It's good.
I think you started before the end of the nomination, so you have an alibi. That's perfect, man. So we are getting quite late, so let's start to wrap up. Where can we find you, Jack, over at social media and your stuff?
I think pretty much everywhere press. So Twitter, I don't have a Patreon or anything like that. Just me. I've got itch.io. So mouseholepress.itch.io is where you can buy my games, and I am on Twitter at mouseholepress. Those 3 words are all one word and all spelt how you'd think they would be. Can
I ask why why the name Mousehole Press? Is there a story question behind that?
Yeah. Not especially long. I live on, but it used to be called Mousehole. So the road I live on used to be called Mousehole because there was a foundry, an ironworks on my road that isn't there anymore. That used to be called Mousehole Foundry. Because they used to get iron from a place in Cornwall, which is about 4 hours away from here, called Mousehole. So they mined in Mousehole, which is about 4 hours away. They bought it down the road, they turned it into iron sheets, and the road was called Mousehole Lane. So I just quite liked. I think going back to my more cynical head, it's really good to have something that is easily pronounceable and spellable, but also quite unique. So
it makes sense. Awesome.
And obviously, because I work with maps, I have all the old maps of where I live. So
it's all it's a reference for your root, right?
Yeah. So if you look on my HO page, in the background is some map, and you could just about make out Mousehole Found.
Okay.
So that's a map from like 1893, I think.
And it's the actual map? It's not a simulation?
Or, it's the map, yeah.
Wow. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, that's beautiful. There's a lot of layers there. Okay.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
The short answer is it's the road that but it's not as interesting.
No, it is. It is interesting. Come on. Oh, at least we make it interesting, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, last topic, last question, Jack. We here in Portugal have a similar show, but not regarding tabletop RPGs, obviously, regarding celebrity and famous things. And the interviewer usually ends the conversation with, "What do your eyes tell?" And the interviewee tells something true and raw about himself, and then the show closes. I like that, and I converted to our subject, the role-playing subject, right? So I must ask you, Jack Harrison, what do your dice tell?
I mean, my eyes tell me that I'm tired.
Oh yes,
But
that's
and I guess that's probably it, right? Like I think I've realized that I need a break off. So I've gone from one thing to one thing to one thing in design, and what that means is every moment that I have that I'm not at work, making dinner, cleaning up with my kid, I'm trying to do some design. So I think it's quite nice in that on Friday Dream Jam finishes, and on Friday Fire Emblem comes out for the Switch, which is one of my favorite game series. So I'm just gonna take a break and play some video games for a while and get back into design in a few weeks, and recharge my batteries. So
because it is okay to take a break.
yeah, it's essential.
Yeah, it's essential. Yeah, we like a the Dungeons and Dragons creature. You have to recharge to come back
Sometimes
stronger.
a short rest is not enough. You need a long rest.
Oh, that's true. A long rest is required. Okay, then that's a perfect answer. I'll be wrapping now the conversation. Thank you so much, Jack, for being here with us. Thank you guys for watching us, and hopefully you fell in love with the artifact as I do, and maybe even with Fickle Loom or Under Ditch if you play Dialect. If you did not play Dialect, go play it and then buy Under Ditch. Or if you have a baby, or if you want to have a baby, play Your Baby is Crying and then talk about that. But what's the most important thing is we have talked about RPGs, and please visit the itch.io page, mousehole.itch.io. It will be in the description, as I've linked, and I already linked here in the chat. Check the page. Follow Jack Harrison, share his work, and if you fell in love with some of his works or games, buy them. Support indie developers because it's important. So thank you so much, everyone. We are now wrapping up the episode, and hopefully we'll see you. You will see me next week, and I don't know yet with whom, but somehow along the week it will be announced. Thank you so much. Jack, do you want to say anything more?
No, thank you so much. This has been really good fun.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Thank you, man. So, bye guys. See you later. And this was the end of the episode with Jack Harrison, that designs tabletop RPGs and even games that are not games about Your Baby is Crying. If you fell in love or you somehow don't know what the artifact is, check his game because it's freaking and fucking awesome. See you next Sunday at Roll for Diplomacy.